and welcome to Round Robin. I'm your host, Robin McCormick with the City of Hampton. And today we're going to talk about homelessness, but also a group that's working for solutions. That is LINK. My guest is Lynne Finding and Ann Ruffin. Welcome.
Thank you.
You know, over here in Hampton, we hear of LINK and think that you're just a Newport News agency, but you're not. I was surprised to learn that.
No, not at all. Many of our clients come from Hampton, and some of our larger programs actually house people in Hampton. We work with the VA, and many of our, all of our veterans come through the VA into our emergency shelter program.
So let's go ahead and kind of break down your different programs, and then we can talk about them a little bit more in detail.
So we have an emergency services center which provides food and clothing, furniture and household items. We serve about 1,000 Hampton clients alone. So
I had no idea.
That is pretty phenomenal. We serve people on a duplicated and an unduplicated basis. So that means one time unduplicated. Duplicated means that they can come back any number of times. We have our winter shelter program, and we work hand in hand with the Hampton City Social Services and with HELP.
And so just to explain a little bit, HELP runs what we call a Night's Welcome. It's at different churches for a week during the extreme weather season only. Is that, and yours
Ours is
Port,
exactly the
right?
same, and it's Port, yep. We run the same way, and we work hand in hand with HELP during that season because a lot of times people go from community to community for different services. And then we have our Veterans Emergency Shelter Program. That's working with homeless veterans who come through the VA. And then we have a medical respite program, which is the only one on the East Coast for veterans who've been homeless and are getting over some form of illness. And then we have our permanent supportive housing program, which Ann runs, and that serves just over 100 people. And out of that 100 households, we have 59 of them are in Hampton, located in Hampton, so yeah.
So kind of let's backing up to what circumstances can make a person be homeless. What do you see here locally? It isn't just the sort of obvious, you know, person pushing a shopping cart or staying under a bridge. The sort of chronic homeless that are a little bit more visible.
A lot of the people we see are people with untreated mental illnesses. We see people suffering with issues of substance abuse, and there are lots and lots of folks in our community now that are just dealing with the economic crisis, lose their job. It's amazing how many people are just a check or two away from homelessness. And what we basically work with in the permanent supportive housing programs are the high barrier folks with extensive issues that prevent them from being stably housed, such as the mental illness piece and the substance abuse piece, and barriers that, like quite often, people can't get into housing because of their credit history. So what LINK does is goes on the lease with the person, which kind of guarantees to the landlord that they will get their rent. And we also work with folks once we get them into housing, because we're a housing first program, which means you address the housing crisis first, then you address the social issues. And we do this over a long term with families and individuals. We're seeing more and more families present without housing. And just as an aside, when we did the federal count this year, the point in time count, we did, of the 400 some odd people that identified as homeless on that day, 117 were found in Hampton. So Hampton does have a housing.
A significant problem, you do.
We do, and you know, I was reading the Regional Coalition report, some of the other circumstances that you didn't mention. Battered women.
Yeah,
yes.
You know, and that
Thank you.
Isn't something we think about necessarily.
No, and
often they have children.
And this is these folks don't always come forward for help. It's when they're really hurt that they end up in the shelters. And we eventually get tabs on them to manage to put them into housing programs. We've actually, when we started CanLink years ago, 2004, when we first started CanLink 1, we were actually housing many of the battered women in partnership with Transitions Family Violence, which is also located in Hampton here. So it's a massive scale, Robin, of not just homeless providers, but other providers too that provide the supportive services to our folks once we've got them housed. Like Centre for Child and Family Services in Hampton, wonderful resource for us. Provide lots of mental health counselling for the children in particular. Great programs for adults who've been sexually abused. And many of their programs are free. They don't have to have insurance to be with them. So
that's important.
It
and
is.
Certainly you can't solve those other issues if someone doesn't have a place to stay and doesn't have food. I mean, they can't keep appointments, they can't take medication, they can't get prescriptions filled.
Right.
There's a whole lot of things
Right.
that just spiral at
Right.
that point, I think.
I think what we notice is it usually takes about 2 years. Once we get somebody into the permanent housing program, if they've been chronically homeless, so if they're individuals, they have to be chronically homeless, which means more than 1 year out on the streets or 4 incidences of homelessness in 3 years. If once we get them in, it's that piece of settling out, looking at all of the things that they need, their doctors, their hospital visits, all of the things that have been wrong with them that haven't been addressed. And it is a good 2 years before they start turning the corner and engaging in the program and other services that we can provide. With families, it's a little different. They do sometimes come forward more quickly, don't they, depending on what their barriers are.
Yes.
Yes. And it's easier. It's easier to work with the kids to find resources for them and placement for them fairly quickly.
Well, and if there's school-age kids, sometimes the referrals can come through the schools.
Correct.
They know
Yes.
something's
Correct.
going on, and there's a lot of institutions and agencies that,
Sure.
that can provide some
Sure.
assistance.
Yeah.
But I do suspect you want people to speak up early. I mean, the permanent
Absolutely.
housing is really for the chronic, but if you can intervene earlier,
Right.
before they've spent all their money at hotels and you
Right.
know, or
When-
whatever else happens.
When they're in hotels, they disappear from the need of help that's available to them. And not all families match the criteria that we have for our permanent supportive housing, but there are other programs out there that can help them into housing and support them, stabilise them with employment and other issues that need to be addressed in order that they don't have to live in hotels again. There's a massive number of people that are staying in hotels, even though both Newport News and Hampton have a limit of a 30-day stay on there. It's very sad for families to have to get up and move every 30 days for these.
Well, part of the
children in
reason for
particular.
that was to help identify people and get them
Correct.
into better
Correct.
programs
Correct.
than that. And I know it doesn't always
It
work,
doesn't.
but that was a lot of
Right.
what was going
The
on.
impetus behind it, yeah, absolutely. But I still feel like we've got lots of work to do on that end. What happens is when we start some things like this, sometimes there are other things that we focus on that come up that we focus on, and we lose the momentum behind what we started initially. And I do feel like United Way, for example, are doing a big push on the what they call the Alice families right now. And these are families that can't quite make it. And I feel like some of these would fall into dealing with the people that are living in hotels and don't have quite enough money to get by or pay the rent or whatever, or they just need that hand up to get into housing.
Well, I think there are, I don't know if there's more, but you definitely see and hear of people who are living that paycheck to paycheck, where they're working low-wage jobs or they're in a service sector and they don't have 40 hours and they don't have benefits. And one thing happens, whether it's a car or a medical bill or an injury, and that existence is gone.
Right.
So just to talk a little bit about how did you get into this work? Because I have heard your name for a number of years associated with Link. You've been doing this for a long time.
Long time. So this is my 27th year with Link. It happened purely by accident. I was working for for-profit businesses at high levels, and I had my own business here in Hampton. Was volunteering actually for Link, and a vacancy came about. But what hit me to my heart and to my core was that I was homeless many years ago when my son was 2. He's now almost 42. We were homeless for a couple of months, and it was really challenging to be out there on the streets at that time. It was in London. There weren't the resources that there are now, both in America and London. But having a taste of that gave me a taste of what folks go through here. And there's that empathy. You want to help. You want to find resources and services that can help other people now. And I feel like we've done that. That's certainly been my life mission. I didn't ever feel like I would be in a job for 27 years, but I've loved every minute of it, and I continue to.
And how do you, okay, so it's got to be hard. You are seeing people in really bad circumstances, you know, kind of all the time. You don't get that, oh, helpless, you know, feeling. You really get successes and know that.
We do, because there's, over the years, you build partnerships with other agencies. And there, like I said earlier, the Center for Child and Family Services and HELP and other agencies, Transitions, there are many of us out there doing the same work, and if we band together, we can find the resources that we need to help people immediately. And I think that's what keeps me going. If we can, you know, share in providing the wealth of resources that we have, we can move on to the next one very quickly.
And you know enough people out there that if
Pretty
your
much.
agency, you know, if that isn't the right place, or if somebody else has a particular service.
Pretty much, and usually we reach out. I mean, if we have a need for something, we reach out. We've got a massive database of people that support us. We have over 8,500 volunteers that work with us annually. We send out emails or Facebook, and usually within 24 to 48 hours, we've got what we need. And they're weird things. And, you know, I do go and talk to churches, and, you know, I ask for cards or whatever it is. And I mean, I've come away from speaking engagements with a conveyor belt one time years ago, and we gave that to the food bank. But, you know, people have things all the time. It's just they don't know where to give it to.
Isn't that wonderful?
So it's just asking, yeah.
Okay.
It is.
And how did you come to the agency, Ann?
Well, actually, I came because I was advocating for a housing placement for a client. I was working with another agency, and found out it was kind of destiny. I found out that the position was open. I got a chance to meet and interview with Lynn, and I just liked. I'd never worked in the nonprofit community before, and I liked the idea of being able to be involved in the process from kind of the start to the end. And it's been really interesting. I was just listening to you guys talk, and I think that it's worth mentioning that the homeless management system is a massive effort by a very large group of for-profit, nonprofit, and government agencies. It's called the Greater Virginia Peninsula Housing Consortium, the GVPHC, and we work collaboratively to maximize the utilization of the very limited resources that we have. It's been very interesting and quite a journey, but I like that we have to work together. The way the system's set up is that we have to work together, and what it stops is duplication of services, because there were a few clients using massive services when we weren't working as closely as we are now. But because we're collaborating, it's kind of a central point of entry. We're able to give the most needed people services first. So in Hampton, the Hampton residents are very much a part of that.
And you come from that background of mental health and substance abuse and working with that. So that brings a lot too.
Yes.
Because clearly those are two of the underlying problems.
Yes.
Not all. But.
And that's my passion, addressing the social issues.
Well, let's talk about our veterans for a minute,
Sure.
because, you know, 5-6 years ago, there was a real crisis with homeless veterans, and the governor said, hey, we're going to do something about this. How has that gone? How does the process work? If there's someone out there, you know, let's make sure that they know they can call for help.
So the veterans go through the VA, and there's a housing, a homeless and housing social worker there at the VA, and they would enter through there. Now, we have a number at Link that they can call our Link number, and we can hook them up, and we can help them navigate through that system. Yes, it was announced 2 years ago, I believe, that we ended homelessness with veterans. That's actually not totally the case. We still have a number.
Well, there's always going to be.
There is. It's very cyclical. And because of the nature of their illnesses, you know, we've been doing our vets shelter program for 9 years now, and we've seen it go up and we've seen it go down, and now it's kind of stabilizing out some. The men, when they're there with us, they stabilize out well, they go back out. We rarely see people come back, but we do see them now and again. The medical respite program was developed as the only one on the East Coast, and there is one other in California that I know of now. We've run that for 6 years, and that's more intensive for homeless veterans who are sick. And they could be having cancer treatment, amputations, certain illnesses where they need, to be stabilized before they can go into the shelter and then eventually into housing. But when they come through us, they always go out to permanent housing. So that's usually through what they call the VASH voucher, the
Right.
Veterans Administrative Supported Housing voucher, and they're still giving those out right now. So and if they don't qualify for those, then we help them find housing through applying for benefits and whatever else they can get to get them into housing. We never return them to the streets.
There are this network, especially the VA, that is there to help veterans, but some people I don't think have reached out.
Right.
Either
Right.
they don't. They want the help, they don't want to ask for
Right.
the help, or
Right.
they're just not able.
And a lot of that is them settling out from when they've left the military. Some have been on the streets for many, many years, and it takes a long time for them to come around. Others are newly discharged from the services, sometimes most of the time at their own leaving, and then they don't know how to cope in the community, and then they don't know where to go. But it really is, the VA are fantastic to work with. They really are there for the guys. They'll help
Now
them.
you're saying guys, and probably many of the older ones are, but it's not exclusively
It's not
men.
no,
our
it's not.
veterans,
It's women as well. You're right, Robin. We only deal with men with our
Okay.
with our shelter and with our respite program. We only deal with men. Malachi House in Newport News deals with the women.
I didn't know.
Yeah.
That's
So
great.
so there is a women's program here, which is really awesome. So if you're a woman and you're needing help out there, then do hook up with the VA. There is help for you, and they deal with women and families, so they can have children as well, which is really cool.
Now, I think there are a lot of people who want to help and don't know how to help.
Sure.
And they may, give money to someone that they see with a sign. What is the best way to work through this problem? How can people really make a difference?
It's really interesting. I used to think years ago that that giving the money to the agencies to help was the way to go, and of course it is, because we can leverage the advantage more with the money. So, for instance, 17 cents a pound from the food bank, and you can get 4 meals for $1 from the food bank if dealing with the food pantry. But when I've talked to people who've given money to people out on the streets, it's because they want to, and
you see
they
someone.
They do, and they don't want to see it go into an agency and sharing the wealth. They would rather give it to that one person because that's what their hearts move them to do. So, if you're moved to do it, then do it.
But if you're really trying
to solve the problem
and make a big difference,
then it's the agencies that need the support. Yeah, absolutely.
And that can be time, that can be money,
Absolutely.
that can be whatever you have.
Absolutely, whatever you have. Everything that we have with our emergency services program comes from the churches, both from across the peninsula, Hampton, Newport News, York County, Williamsburg. We go and pick up from all sorts of different places, and we recycle any of the household items or furniture that people give to us back to people who are moving into housing that are homeless, or could be like in Isabel or the other storms that we've had over the years where people have lost things. We've been able to furnish people with beds or couches or whatever they've lost in the storm. So, and even actually fire. We have referrals now and again from Red Cross when people
Right, because
lose
they
their-
really just do the immediate need.
Yeah.
The longer term need
Correct.
isn't in there.
So-
and that's what's so wonderful about all of you working together and sort of making sure people don't fall through the cracks.
Right.
Yes.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, is there anything else you all want to add before we close?
No, just like to thank you for the opportunity
Yeah.
to showcase the homeless population in Hampton.
Well, thank you. And there are other agencies that I've talked to, and I'm so glad to learn. There are regional agencies based in one city that help all, Transitions is based here, it's a
Absolutely.
regional agency. All those things, Food Bank is based here, it's regional. So understanding more about what you do has been enlightening to me as well.
Thank you. Thank you for having us.
And thank you for watching. I hope you've learned a little bit more about the problem and some of the things Link is doing toward long-term solutions that truly make a difference in people's lives. Thanks for watching.